I actually call divorce a shit sandwich. I am all about helping people find that balance of moving forward. Most people haven't been through this before. They don't know how to navigate that challenging line. The best learnings from the whole process is what got you to this point so that you can do your best. You can't control everything. Do your best to minimize the chance that it will happen again.
Hey y'all, 𝐥𝐤𝐤 with the 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐤 podcast. Welcome back. We're so glad you're here. Would you do me a favor? It will only take you a couple seconds. Whether you're listening or watching right now, will you head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button? It really helps us get this message to more and more people that we can help. Greatly appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Derelict Podcast. For the disparaged, depleted, and delinquent souls trying to find our way, we're talking about the scary part of the journey, where we don't know how it'll end. Let's be free to face our fucking failures in real time as the most unadulterated, truest version of who we are. No sugarcoating. Welcome to the shit show, you derelict.
Welcome, you derelicts, to another episode of the Derelict Podcast. I'm your host, 𝐥𝐤𝐤, and we have a guest here today, and we're going to be talking about divorce. What a fun subject. Something that both Andra and I have both been through. So welcome, Andra Davidson. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah. So just briefly, I just want to briefly tell the listeners, viewers, etc., a little bit about you. So I understand that you're a communications VP at one point in your career. You're trained for mediation. You also went through a divorce yourself, right?
I did.
I think you said
yes.
You were married for a couple decades. Is that correct?
That's not how I normally say it, but it makes it seem
20
really,
years?
really long when you say it like that. Yes, I would.
Well.
Yes, I was married for 20 years.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So you are definitely qualified to talk a little bit about how to help people through divorce. I help a lot of men through divorce as well. So we are very similar in our mission and our passion to be able to help people, not just men, obviously, but I focus on men going through that difficult process because it's a beast. It's a beast. I mean, I think a lot of people think too, like, well, it's okay because, you know, my spouse and I, like, we get along and we're friends and all that. It doesn't matter. It's still difficult. There's still all of these things that pop up, these contentions, these difficulties. And a lot of them I've found are kind of under the surface sometimes. I don't know about you.
Very true. I actually call divorce, I love your description, a beast. I call it a shit sandwich because that's the name of my newsletter. Divorce is a shit sandwich because—
Is it really? That's fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. Because no matter, to exactly your point, and this is why I call it that, no matter how amicable you are, which is awesome. And I am all about helping people find that balance of moving forward.
Of
and
course. We all want that, right? I mean, if we could all be amicable, that'd be wonderful.
Right. That exactly. But how do you know how to do that? You don't necessarily have the tools to do that. Most people, not everybody, but most people haven't been through this before. They don't know how to navigate that challenging line, right? So, there are—
Can I actually, let me just say that real quick. I just want to make a comment, which maybe will help people be interested in listening to this conversation too. Because, so I've been in the financial planning space for 18 years. I still own a financial planning company. I don't even know if you knew that. We've never talked about that. But one of the things that I found with clients, and I help a lot of clients that are moving towards retirement and then they're getting into retirement. And what I often say to them is, look, if you do this right, you're going to do it once, right? You're going to retire one time. But I've helped hundreds of people go through that process. So I can see patterns and ideas and I have emotions and I know what people are going through because I've seen hundreds of people do it. Whereas that person's probably going to do it one time. And I would say, I think that's a really great analogy for what you do, right? I mean, obviously there are several people that get divorced several times, but
but that's a smaller
it sounds a little
percentage
weird
of the
saying it this way,
population.
but if you do it right, you only have to do it once, right?
That's
Hopefully you don't have to do it again.
Absolutely. That's hopefully one of the best learnings from the whole process is what got you to this point so that you can do your best. You can't control everything, obviously, but so that you can do your best to minimize the chance that it will happen again. That's a very worthwhile place to spend some energy.
Yeah. So let's go back to your story for a second. So you are a certified divorce coach, correct?
Yeah.
Which means what for the layman?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm really glad for people to understand what that means. So the certification is through an organization actually called the Certified Divorce Coaching organization. And I went through a pretty rigorous process. And I have to say, when I did that, I really wasn't sure how good the content would be, how useful it was. And I was so pleasantly surprised by the mentoring, the amount that I learned, the opportunity to network with other divorce coaches, and just gather what you're talking about is that experience and perspective from people who've been doing it. So it was actually fantastic training. I did that. And then, as you also mentioned, I'm a trained mediator. I went through our bar association here in Colorado, where I'm located, and got my 40-hour mediation certification, which I use all the time, not as a practice. I don't have a mediation practice, but those skills obviously are very useful in the divorce space.
Can we back out for a second? So you are, this is fascinating to me because you're married for 2 decades. I'm going to keep saying it that way.
Thank you for keep reminding me.
Just based on just that. I could just feel it's like a knife every time I say it, isn't it? I'm not calling you old. It's a lot of time. I'm not calling you it's the same amount of time. Okay. So you're for what it's worth, I was with my ex-wife for 17 years. So I'm not that far behind you.
Nope. You're not.
But at least no one could say 2 decades, right? Kidding.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're like, why did I come on this podcast just to get teased the whole time? Okay, so
I'm old. Yeah.
No, you're not. So you're married. Okay, so you're married for a long time.
I also got married when I was young.
Okay, yeah, I did too, for sure.
Right.
So you get divorced, and then there's obviously some sort of process. Like, can you tell us a little bit about what was the process from I'm getting divorced to I'm becoming a certified divorce coach because of the fact that I realize people need a lot of help. Like what happened in there? Did you get help? Did you not get help? Was there certain people you did get help from? Like if you could rewind time, were there people that you wish were in your life at that point? Can you expand that a little bit?
Yes. Well, I will shortcut to, I wish there had been a divorce coach in my life for sure.
Amen. Amen. I don't care if anyone here is religious or not, by the way, amen is not a religious word. But amen, I agree. All it means is I agree. Because if there was anything that I wish I could have had through my divorce was a coach. So sorry to interrupt. I just couldn't agree.
Oh, no, I completely agree. Look, thankfully, my ex and I, despite it being obviously really challenging, we really made a commitment to put our kids first. We really were able to deliver on that. I know not everybody is, but I do think more people are than they probably give themselves the opportunity for. So I do think it is something important to say. I had a really difficult situation. I was floored. I was a puddle on the ground for a long time. We have twins. They were in high school at the time. It was I really thought my life as I knew it, was over. I could not imagine what life post-divorce looked like for me. I really had chosen to tie up so much of my identity in being the mom and a wife and being the head of my family in that way. It was important to me. It's where I put so much of my energy, and having to readjust and decide who I was going to be post-divorce was a very significant shift in my life. So a couple things I learned.
And can I just?
Yeah, please.
So first of all, again, I relate to you a lot. We have a very similar story. As you were speaking, I was like, I could be saying the exact same words. That's exactly how I felt as well. And I think I just wanted to pause on that for a moment because I think oftentimes we might think, now, let me actually just clarify for a second. Were you a stay-at-home mom? Were you working? What was kind of your job at that time?
I was working part-time. I was working, but...
Was your husband working at the time?
Yes.
The only reason I'm asking,
he had a crazy busy schedule, and that was part of why I
for sure
stayed home some. And that was a decision we made together. So that was an adjustment too, right?
And the only reason I'm bringing it up is that I think that's a great decision. But the only reason I'm bringing it up is that I think sometimes we think of either like the non-primary breadwinner or the homemaker or the person that's staying home more, et cetera, as the one that might have more of their identity wrapped up in a marriage, at least from what I hear people talking about it. Like if you see...
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like you see the woman that's staying at home with the kids and everything's wrapped up with the kids and the guy's working all the time. You're like, well, of course she has it, but he probably doesn't because he's out working, or vice versa. She's out working, he's at home with the kids. Doesn't matter which gender. But I just think it's really interesting that we had the same exact experience. And my wife was a stay-at-home mom. That was the decision we made. Right. She did like some stuff kind of on the side, but I mean, primarily that's what she did the entire time we were together. And I went out and worked, and I've always owned businesses and that sort of thing. So my life was always kind of crazy, but I spent a lot of time with the kids. But I had a lot of identity in work and other things as well. And I still felt the same way. And I just think
I think that's a dangerous assumption to make.
I agree.
Because, the person who is out of the house more, that somehow that translates to less of an emotional hit when divorce happens. I don't think there's really any logic to that assumption, right? We don't know how different people process this huge transition. And part of the challenge, and I'm sure you see this with the men that you work with, but because I know I do, but part of the challenge is helping men to be comfortable admitting that they are in that place, that it is really, really hard and sad and overwhelming and depleting and all the same things I say to my women clients. But somehow, if there's this assumption that they shouldn't feel that way, I don't know why that should be the case. Men get to feel that same kind of grief and sadness and overwhelm that a woman feels as they go through divorce.
I agree. And I'm not going to blame it on this, but we've talked about this on the show before as well. I think societally, it's more acceptable in general for women. Like, we've talked about this before where it's in general, from my experience on this planet, if a woman comes and says, like, I'm in an abusive relationship, or I'm having an issue, or there's something I really want to work on, and I'm in a victim support group, or I'm going to therapy, or fill in the blank, overwhelmingly the response is good for you. That's awesome. So glad you're taking care of yourself. That's amazing. And I feel like overwhelmingly, if a man says the same thing, the response is, what the hell is wrong with you? Or what did you do? Did you have an affair? Did you have sex with your secretary?
Right. That you're automatically assumed that you should feel guilty about something if that's where you are.
Yeah. And again, I'm not blaming it entirely on this. I just think that as men, a lot of the times we don't feel, it's part of the reason I started this podcast, actually, because I think a lot of times as men, we don't feel like we can actually just be honest about how difficult that thing is without looking like we're a crybaby, or we're just like, we're not manning up. Right. We're not actually dealing with our problems the way men should deal with them.
Right. Whatever that means.
Yeah. Whatever that means. Exactly.
Right. Well, I actually think that's, we sort of circle back to why it's so important to have a coach in a divorce process, because a divorce coach is the person, different than a lawyer, right? Different than a therapist.
Let's
and I know we'll go
into
that. Yeah.
Let's preface that maybe with a question. So
sure.
This is, I can't remember if I mentioned to you or not, but last year I wrote an ebook and it's called The 5 Traps Men Face When Going Through Divorce and How to Triumph Over Them. And it's a really short ebook that's on Amazon right now.
That. Yeah, I'll check it out.
I will send you a free copy for sure.
I would love to have it.
Absolutely. But one of the chapters, one of the 5. So what I did, this is not supposed to be a promotion for my book, but I'll just tell you real quick. So what I did is I actually went out and I interviewed dozens of people that I know that have personally gone through divorce, different attorneys, et cetera, like everything from an attorney to a therapist to friends to et cetera. And I basically said, hey, what are the 5 things that you wish you would have known when you were going through divorce? And I interviewed men and women, not just men. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, basically the 5 everybody picked was the same 5 I already had. It wasn't a shocker. So one of those 5, though, was picking the wrong team. And in that chapter, I talk about therapists, coaches, mediators, attorneys, etc. I also talk about finance people, forensic accountants. I mean, I talk about a lot of different people.
Right.
But I think to frame the question, because I think you probably have a really good answer here, is that a lot of people, when they're going through a divorce, if it's contentious at all, the first thought is attorney, and maybe before that is mediator, especially depending on the state. Like in the state I live in.
What the laws are,
Yeah, you have to have a mediator first before you're even allowed to go to court with an attorney.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times you still take an attorney with the mediator. It's a confusing process. But
it's like that in Colorado too.
Yeah, is it? Mm-hmm. So they think of that, right? Like mediator, attorney, maybe I can wrap my head around because it's required. It's probably something that I need. I understand that I want to make sure that somebody's on my side, etc. But mediators and attorneys are definitely not there to coach at all.
No.
A mediator can't because they literally,
neutral.
They're neutral. They can't be for you at all. And the attorney does not want to deal with your shit. Attorneys hate it. They hate it. So
they
a lot of people
don't want to be a therapist.
Right. So then a lot of people I hear say, well, then you go to a therapist. Okay. So let's maybe break this down however you want to break it down. Let's just take attorney, coach, and therapist. What are their roles going through divorce?
Okay. Love this question. I think it's so important for people to understand the distinct and really important areas of focus for each of these different professions, right? So the attorney is focused on the legal dissolution of the marriage, period. That is what their area should be. And that is a very logical place for people to go to because we do need to legally dissolve the marriage. That needs to happen. Now, it doesn't always have to happen with a full-blown retainer attorney. There are other ways to get that legal dissolution, and we can talk about that, but that is the role that the attorney plays. Now, because people trust them, and depending on the level of animosity, what kind of assets you have, what kind of custody issues there might be, your lawyer may be more or less involved in your case. But the lawyer is an important piece. And whether you use him or her in an unbundled fashion, which just means essentially hourly, it means you don't necessarily have to pay for a full retainer, but you can get somebody to look at your case and make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. So whether you do that or you go all in and you have an attorney on retainer, an attorney plays an important role, but it's not a requirement. Okay, so that's an attorney, the legal dissolution.
Let me add something to that, though, just for anyone that's listening that might even be thinking about, maybe I don't need an attorney. You can do paperwork yourself. Anybody can. All the paperwork's available. It's all there and available. You can try to figure out how to work the court system. And I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to mess something up if you do it that way. You just will. So here's what I would ask you to think about. If you think, well, maybe my divorce isn't super contentious, we'll do the paperwork together. I've actually had friends do it together, and I've seen the issues arise. But it doesn't usually arise right away. It arises years later. Right. It arises years later where it's like, oh, everything's been going fine for the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Now, all of a sudden, somebody gets something up there, you know what? And they're like, oh, I think I want this, or I need this, or whatever. Then the way that you filled out the paperwork wrong will come back to bite you. So the question 100%. Is, do you want to just spend a few $1,000s up front just to have somebody even at least review it, like you said, to cross your T's, dot your I's, in order to avoid tens, if not hundreds, if not millions of dollars later on? I think it's worth it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I say that to everybody. I really don't recommend a pro se divorce, which just means by yourself. It is fraught with potential for disaster, as you articulate. And even if it is not overnight, it will show up somehow. Somebody wants to modify a parenting agreement. There's a financial change. Someone makes more, makes less, changes job, inherits $1 million. loses $1 million. There's all kinds of scenarios in which something will come up that you don't know about now. And you are so much better prepared if your legal language is correct and has been vetted during the initial divorce process.
Absolutely.
It will save you thousands of dollars. I couldn't agree more.
I would, again, I will sync it to the analogy of financial planning with estate planning. And that is, a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to just go get a will or a power of attorney, advance directive, trust, etc. online. Again, you can do that. There are free sites or very inexpensive sites where you can get that done for a few $100.
Yeah.
But I'll put it in the words of an attorney from a long time ago that I've always remembered. And he said, you can do that, but I've never reviewed one that didn't have issues. Never. And this is a guy who just reviewed these all day long for everybody.
Oh my
and he
gosh,
didn't have
that's a strong
one
statement.
Didn't have one example. So what ends up happening is that then you get into court, whether it's for an estate or your divorce, and then something comes up that you didn't realize. And it's just because of the fact that you don't know how to look at it. Like, I went to school for pre-law. I originally thought I was going to become an attorney. So I can read contracts really well. And I miss stuff all the time because of the legalese. It's impossible.
Even an attorney who doesn't deal with this kind of divorce might miss something. They'll tell you to go to a
divorce attorneys. Like, not to throw anyone under the bus, but the first divorce attorney I had did some things in our paperwork that has cost me a lot of money since, when I had to hire another divorce attorney and they supposedly knew their stuff and they were highly ranked and I paid them a lot of money. It doesn't even matter. Like, it's still the 80-20 rule, if not worse. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, they're still going to make mistakes, which is a different subject, right? In terms of how you protect yourself in those situations. And there
I
are
don't make mistakes, Andra, so I don't know what you're talking about. Like, did you see my coffee mug today?
Mr. Right. I love it.
I'm just here.
You're just
so I'm
immune
just
to that.
listening. I'm trying to understand what it's like for all these people that make mistakes.
All these poor people out there who
the guy that literally called his podcast derelict, which means disparaged, which means outcast, which means failure, basically, is the guy saying that, right?
That's where we have to find the humor in things, right? We have to. That's part of a strategy of getting through not just divorce. That's a bigger picture strategy, right?
So I appreciate you bringing my ADHD in focus. So let's get back to we did attorney. Now let's kind of talk about how that's different from a coach or a therapist.
Yeah, great. So the attorney plays that role of the legal dissolution of your marriage. Okay. Then a therapist is awesome. So let me start by saying I've been in therapy practically my whole life. Love therapy. I think it's so valuable. I think anybody who can, access that support should, if they are interested. But a therapist in your divorce, as an amazing as a tool as it is different than a coach, because a therapist is focused usually on looking at patterns, history, maybe diagnosing something, really understanding how past choices may have contributed to where you are today. Those are really worthwhile things to dive into, especially as you look at what you want your life to be post-divorce. How do you learn from what you've gone through and incorporate that so that you make different and healthy choices going forward? Those are really good questions. Very important. And it's not to say that a therapist can't help you cope with the day-to-day anxiety or stress or any of the things that you're feeling, but you're probably meeting once a week, for an hour or so. Contrast that with a coach. So the way that I work with clients is we are specifically focused forward. And I like to offer that point of differentiation between a therapist and a coach. I am there specifically to help with the divorce. I'm not going back and talking about, the relationship with siblings, parents, older relationships, right? I am focused on getting you through the divorce time. What that might look like is addressing the biggest pain points. Okay, are you overwhelmed by the paperwork? Let's make a plan to break it into small pieces. I may sit there with clients and help them fill out the paperwork, help them find the resources that they need. Often help my clients build their team, find a great lawyer, find a mediator, maybe a certified divorce financial analyst, someone to bring in to help them with the finances and a budget. Maybe they need a stylist as they're ready to move into their next life and sort of change things up and feel like, okay, who do I want to be in this next phase? But everything that we're doing in the coaching realm is about looking forward and breaking down the process into manageable pieces that you can handle and get through. It's also being a cheerleader and an advocate for you, I do a lot of mediation prep with clients, helping them to decide what a home run outcome might be, what I can live with that outcome, and what doesn't work for them. And what I find is that the lawyers really appreciate that because they don't necessarily have the time to do that kind of in-depth pro-con, breaking it down, that takes hours. Where they block, 1 or 2 hours for mediation prep. Okay, tell me, what your main goal is. Well, if your client hasn't thought about that, they don't know what their main goal is, right? Oh, I want to walk out okay. Okay, well, what does that look like? What does okay look like for you? What does that mean? So working with the team as a coach is a big part of what I do. And that's different from a therapist too. Your therapist probably isn't involved in those kinds of calls, right? On the phone with a mediator, on the phone with your attorney, helping you to plan for all of these different pieces. So coaching looks different for everybody depending on what they need. But what it does do is answer your specific issues, pain points, create situations, the words, the steps that you need to navigate those most challenging parts of the process with an advocate and a thinking partner, someone to just go back and forth with, because you're not at your best. I always say it's just such a brutal irony that we need to make these really consequential life choices during a time when we're emotionally at our worst, right? That sucks. That's awful and hard. So having somebody who's seen it, to your point earlier, right? Who's seen these things, who knows how things typically go, who has a different perspective, is a professional, not bringing their own divorce baggage, because that's sometimes what happens when your friends and family get involved.
Sometimes.
Yeah, right?
100% of the time.
Yeah.
Well, let's not even leave anything out of that. It's going to happen 100%.
They mean well, right? I always say,
of course
they're probably really loyal to you, which is why they're saying, Josh, take her stuff and throw it out the window. Are you kidding me? Josh, she does not deserve your good. Exactly. Burn it down, right? Burn it down does not serve your kids.
Nope.
Okay. Burn it down does not serve your long-term goal, which I hope you have, of healthy co-parenting. So when
but
people
to your point,
say that,
but to your point, when you're an emotional disaster,
that's right.
And
it's easy to go with, burn it down.
Of course. And anyone listening right now, don't give me that shit that you're not an emotional disaster. We all are when we're going through that process. It doesn't matter if you have a good relationship with your spouse or not. It doesn't even matter how contentious it is. The process of unbundling yourself from another person is not what we were meant to be as humans. So it will be difficult no matter what.
Right.
And I love the way that you said it as well. And I was actually wondering if we were going to disagree on this whole difference between a therapist and a coach, and we don't, which is, unfortunate for social media, because I just wanted to be like, no, I disagree, blah, 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 so I can put it on social media. Maybe I'll just put that part on social media. But here, I actually had a new thought as you were talking about this. So I've often worded it the same way you have. Therapist looks at the past, coach looks at the future. Because in general, that's true. It's not 100% of the time.
Right.
But in general, I've always seen, and I saw a therapist for years as well. And I think a therapist is really good at dealing with any sort of stuff from your childhood, trauma, past incidents, things that are sticking you to the past, right? That's a whole
That's a good way to put it.
therapist
Sticking
job.
you to the past. Yeah, I like that.
And some therapists claim that they look to the future, and I would say the only ones that do are the ones that are actually coaches, because therapists really don't do that. That's not how they're trained. And it doesn't matter if you're a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, et cetera. It's all the same. We're all still looking at what are you stuck on in the past.
Yeah.
And then a coach, very much so, we're not sitting there saying, hey, what was your childhood trauma? What did your father say to you when you were 5? Because we don't care. No offense. We just don't care. That's the therapist's job. I'm also not trained. I'm not trained on how to do that. I don't know what to do. All I know is, okay, let's forget that limiting mindset for a second. How are we moving forward? What does 2.0 of you look like?
That's
And I know that the one thing I really wanted in my divorce was somebody that was not my friend or family with good intentions, but somebody that was just outside that could coach me and be like, what do you want? Because it was something, I didn't want my divorce. So what I wanted is I wanted somebody to come along and be like, look, what do you want 2.0 to look like? Because the only thought that I could have is my life is over, like you were saying.
Totally. You
like,
have
I don't
to
even
find...
know. If I didn't have kids, Andra, I don't know if I'd still be here. Like, that's how much I cared about like my marriage and how wrapped up, in a very unhealthy way, how unwrapped up I was in it. But here's the new thought that I just had. So I've talked about that a lot in the past. Therapist past, coach future.
Right.
But I haven't really thought about the fact that the attorney is usually present. I haven't really thought about that.
As part of working with the coach, is that what you're referring to?
No, just as far as what part of your life they're dealing with the most. So,
okay.
Yeah, they're dealing with the future because obviously they're writing paperwork that's going to apply to your future. But the attorney's main job is to get you the proper paperwork that you can be okay with, because no one's ever happy. It's always a compromise.
No, right.
But to get you the appropriate paperwork that is going to stand up in court for what you are going to be decently okay with, which is all a very present moment.
Very much so. And to set you up for your future success, right?
Absolutely.
So they want to give you every opportunity.
So yes, to set you up for the future, but not, they don't care. I mean, no offense, but attorneys don't care about you 2.0 at all. What they care about is let's make sure that we have the paperwork so that you get what is okay to you in the future. So I'm not, so they care about that aspect of it, but they don't care about like who you're becoming. Like that's not an attorney's job.
No, that's not their focus. But I do think that in my experience, they can do their best work if, and this is again, an opportunity for a partnership with a coach, because if in a partnership with a coach, you've identified your goals of who you do want to be V2, right? 2.0, and you can tell your attorney, this is where I want to be in the world. Well, now they can think about that as they're drafting things, right? They want to set you up with the most flexibility possible, the ability to move, to grow, to do the things that are in your dreams. So if they know that helps them do their best work for you.
100%. And then
not every attorney is going to dig into that, to your point, but I think some of the good ones
but it's
do.
in the smart ones, it's in their best interest, because if they can get, like, again, I've had good attorneys in this process as well. Even the first one that messed some things up in general did a really good job. The second one was much better. But in general, like what I mean when I say, because I want to clarify this, what I mean when I say they don't care is they don't have time to care about like whatever your bullshit is that you're trying to deal with right now. And I'm not saying that as a coach, that's what we do all day long. That's probably more what a therapist does than anybody. But they also just, as an attorney, because I just know how their brain works, because I was originally trained as one, like the idea is we have to get this paperwork and we have to get this person through this process. Yeah. Like it's not in an attorney's best interest for your divorce to drag out for 10 years. It might, because there are divorces that happens, but it's not in their best interest. Their best interest is, let me get as much detailed, insane work done as possible so that I can bill the highest hours, which will then help the firm. It'll help me and everything else, and get you what you're okay with, so that therefore you introduce me to other people that will also be okay with what I get them, right? Their job is not like, let's sit down and vision your future. Let's sit down and try to figure out, what does life 2.0 after your divorce look like? Attorneys don't enjoy doing that. And that's fine. They're not trained to do it.
No, that's not their background. That's not their training.
Not at all.
That is exactly, I don't know about, your coaching approach, but for me, that's exactly where I love to start, actually. I start everybody talking about, what is your own personal mission? What are your divorce goals? And then I actually like to do a divorce mission statement to help you.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Really align your actions with your intentions throughout the process. Because as we're so depleted, as we're struggling, it's so much nicer to have something to fall back on, to look back on and say, yeah, this is my mission statement. This is my belief system. If this doesn't help me to get to my goals, if this doesn't reinforce my mission of being a healthy co-parent, of doing what's best for my kids, of being the high road person that I want to be, it helps me make a choice in that moment. And putting it together takes the guesswork out of doing it as each decision comes down the road, because then you just have something to refer back to. You don't have to do it every single time a tough decision comes up.
Can you give an example? Like, I don't need an exact mission statement, but can you just give an example of like
I can.
What is in a mission
I'm
statement?
reaching here. I'm going to read you my own mission statement because I have it right here. I keep it, and it doesn't look very pretty, but like this is how I write it out, right?
So you're going to read us your divorce mission statement?
Yes. So actually, this one is my personal mission statement. But this, as I was, I'm not sure if this showed up, but I was just showing you, I write it down right here. I just keep it in a non-fancy way, right? Just right by my computer. But
I love it.
My mission is to grow all my personal relationships and create a thriving coaching practice based on the values of abundance and wholehearted living, helping others and myself to show up as our best, most authentic selves in all aspects of our lives, even and especially when it's most difficult to do so.
I love that.
And, I have a divorce mission statement that I did not have the wherewithal at the time to create, but I created post-divorce to use as a guide for my clients that they can take or leave. I will invite anybody to go download my free communications workbook on my website. It's free. You're welcome to it. It gives you the template and the mission statement. You can use as much or as little of it as you want. These tools, I hope, are just there to help everybody navigate this with just a little bit more intention and calm, right? I believe that it's not just having the statement that can be so valuable, but it's the process of doing it that makes you reflect about who you want to be and set some standards and set some goals so that you can show up as that person who you want to be during the process. And that's a real gift. That's a gift not to your ex. And I think it's really important for people to understand that. I don't suggest you do this stuff for your ex, because people will always say right away then, oh, he or she doesn't deserve it. They probably don't. And I actually don't care. But what I do care about is that you deserve the best. And that when you work to create a statement like that guides you to figure out what your values are and stay true to them and take the high road, even in those most difficult moments, of which there will be many, as you have pointed out, and we both know from our experience, you realize that you have more strength and confidence than you thought you did, and that you can get through really hard things, and you start doing it. You start seeing the payoff of taking the high road, even if your ex doesn't. And people will say that to me all the time. Well, he or she doesn't, so why should I? That's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you want to be the best version of yourself, because you want to look back on this time and say, I did my best. I did my best for myself. If you have kids, for my kids, I am the role model that I want to be in this process. I want to look back and not wish I could do it all again and undo the stuff that I did. That driver is significant, right? That's what I would love for people to be using as their primary driver, not because their ex deserves, doesn't deserve, is doing something, is down the road. That kind of thinking will make you just crazy, because it's obsessing over something you can never control. And I think to everybody who's in this process, I've been talking a lot about control, and my blog post this week is about that actually, is that obsessing over trying to control what your kids do at the other person's house, or, what your ex may or may not say or tell them, or what even, why your marriage ended, or revisionist history, or what somebody might think of something else, is so futile that it will just make you crazy. And it will just send you down a rabbit hole and increase your stress and anxiety, when I would so much rather you take that energy and put it toward being healthy and taking care of your own emotional well-being, so that you can move forward and become the person that you want to be out there in the world.
You said so many good things there. And I think I just want to go down a couple of them because I really appreciated what you said.
Sure.
The number one thing I heard you say, and you didn't say it this way, I'm just going to repeat it in my words, is actually, you know what, before I even go through these things, you mentioned something that I want to bring up. And you said that you have a digital course that helps you get through divorce and gives you some of the tools and tactics to do that, right?
Yeah.
And you actually told me about it before we started recording, because I was asking if there was anything that you wanted to help our listeners with. And then you also offered to give everybody a discount on this, which, by the way, you're not charging enough already on the course. So I do really appreciate you giving this discount. And just for all the listeners and viewers that want to go buy it, I would buy it right now, because I'm literally going to try to convince Andra to increase her price at least double after this, because she's not charging. I know you're not charging enough for this. So go get it right now. It's how to get through divorce. So if you want people to reach out to you on Instagram, right?
Yeah. So
that's the best way.
Any of your listeners, Josh, who want to send me a DM on Instagram, my Instagram is at Andra Davidson, and my name is spelled Andra Davidson, then underscore at, sorry, that's my Instagram. But if you want to DM me derelict there, so I know they're a podcast listener, I will send you a code for $50 off. It's only $199, and I appreciate your,
it's
nice,
true. It's true. Honestly, it should be $1,000, because what they're going to learn through that will save them so much money, so much heartache, so much other things. So absolutely, it's well worth it. So you heard it here.
Thank you.
Go on to Instagram, connect with Andra Davidson _. Yep. Send her the word derelict, and she's going to send you a $50 off coupon with the link on how to buy that. Also, if you missed all of that, because there's a lot of confusing words in there, just check the show notes, whether you're watching on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, wherever. Just look at the show notes. It'll be in there as well. So let's go back to what you were saying. And everybody take her up on that. That's an awesome offer. I heard a couple things. Number one, what I heard, and you didn't specifically say the word focus, but you were talking about focus. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've seen in my own life going through divorce, plus men that I've coached, is, as is true with any transition, any relationship transition especially, where's your focus going to be? And your focus could either be on everything about this sucks, my ex sucks, the court sucks, the attorney sucks, everybody sucks, or it could be on, this is an opportunity for me to grow. This is an opportunity for me to become the best 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0 or 5.0 version of myself. Yep. So where do you want to focus? Because if you know what your life is going to be like, everybody listening and watching this has done both of these things, including myself, including yours truly.
We all have. And
we all do.
That's
and know what your life is like when you do one versus the other, because that goes to the other thing that I wanted to bring up with you, which is really, really good. And that is, again, you didn't explicitly say this, but if you have bitterness or anger or resentment in your heart, and you, I mean, anybody, including myself, it only hurts you.
Right.
It does not hurt anybody else. When
they don't even know you're walking around like that half the time, but it's eating away at you.
Sometimes it actually helps the other person. Like if somebody really has it out for you and you have a lot of bitterness and anger, and then what they do like really bothers you and they can see it really bothers you, sometimes that actually fuels the fire. Sometimes it actually makes it worse. So not only does it not help the other person or help you, but it makes everything worse. And most of the time, like you said, Andra, like when I've held or harbored bitterness, anger, resentment in my heart, usually the person that I've held that towards has no idea.
Right.
And even if they
You're
do, it
drinking
usually
the
doesn't
poison.
affect them.
That's right. Exactly. You're drinking the poison, but you're walking around thinking that they're sick. And it's just not the case. And though I do hope your listeners will give themselves a break. This is so normal. It's so understandable that they're in that rut. And that is, again, why it's so useful in an emotionally overwhelming, exhausting time like divorce to have somebody to offer you a new perspective, to help you move through that part. It's so understandable to be in it, right? That you're grieving, you're getting over this major relationship in your life. You don't necessarily know how to do that. So be kind to yourself that you don't know how to do it, and
For sure.
be willing to ask for some help, because there are people like you, like me, that do know how to do this, and we are willing to share that expertise and help guide you through the process.
And I hope what people are hearing too is that the only reason really that either one of us knows how to do any of this is because we've been through it ourselves and we've helped other people through it. It's not like either one of us are claiming, and like I don't hear this from you at least. Neither one of us are claiming to be just like geniuses and like we're so smart and we just it's just that we've gone through it. Like we've just walked other people through.
We went through it, and we chose to pay close attention to what we learned in order to build on it and share it with other people. And for me, we're joking about that I'm old, but I kind of am old, but I pivoted later in my career because, as crazy as it is, this is the work that I was meant to be doing. And I love being able to help people see their future and their potential. And that is so awesome. And I hope more and more people will be kinder to themselves in the process, recognizing that they don't have to do this by themselves. And there is absolutely no shame in asking for that help. And that's a special message to the men, right? Who in particular can find it more challenging to ask for that support. So I hope that they will hear that they deserve that support as much as anybody and ask for it.
Well, and you're bringing up kind of the third thing I wanted to bring up from what you said earlier, which is something that I've learned. And this is applicable in a relationship transition, a divorce, going through a difficult health incident, whatever it is that's pushing and challenging you to become a better version of yourself. What I found in every single one of those areas of my life and everyone that I've seen is that you have to do it for yourself. You cannot do it for someone else. So you said earlier, like, well, I want to do this for my ex. It could be for my ex or against my ex, right? Depending on the feeling of your ex. But it can't be that. It can't even be for your kids. And let me explain this. What I'm not saying, I want to be really clear here because people would take this the wrong way. I'm not saying be an egotistical, narcissistic piece of shit that doesn't care about anybody. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you have some sort of a mission or a vision for your future and who you want to be, you have to be, and you get motivation from other people for sure, but you have to have some internal motivation to do that for yourself, because as humans, we will always disappoint each other. So if you do it for anyone else, even if it's your kids, at some point they're going to disappoint you. So that is bound for failure. And this is coming from a guy who used to do everything for his wife, for his kids, until I realized that that is a losing game. Because eventually
you can't control their reactions either. You can only...
Back to your point about what can you control? All I can control is me. All I can control is my actions. All I can control is how do I want to get to the next level of my development? And I have to do it for myself. Now, that doesn't mean it's not for my children and everything else. Of course it is.
Right.
Like most of the things that I do are to make sure that I can be as good of a dad as possible to my children.
Absolutely.
However, I have to put on my oxygen mask first. I have to be the one that makes sure that I become the person. Because what's more important to my kids is for me not to just sit around and tell them what to do. You know this, you have kids. But it's for me to be the person that they want to be. The only way to...
Yep.
I got in a disagreement with a friend a while ago on whatever channel it was. I think it was Facebook before I deleted my account because I hate Facebook. But we got into this argument about respect. And my point, which he disagreed with, and I completely disagree with him, is that respect has to be earned. There's no reason for me to respect people that are disrespectful or for people that have not earned respect. Love, care, compassion, political correctness, all that sort of stuff, sure, but not respect. You have to earn respect. I feel the same way. And I remember I heard somebody say this once and it seemed really harsh, but they said, look, I tell that to my kids all the time. This is what he said. He said, I tell my kids all the time, you have my love no matter what. Doesn't matter what you do. He said, but my respect you have to earn. And I thought that was really, really powerful. Not everybody agrees with it. Yeah. But here's the reason I agree with it, is that if I think about my children, I cannot demand respect from them. It doesn't work. Have you ever tried that?
Yeah.
You're a parent.
Like
of course you tried it, right?
Hill,
like,
right? Yeah.
I'm your father. You will respect me. Like that. I heard that shit all the time growing up. It doesn't work though. Like I have to be a respectful person for them to respect me. Now I can teach them how to respect people that are respectful people, but I have to be a respectful person. I can't just demand it. And that was a lesson that I had to learn that was really hard for me, especially with my ex-spouse and everything else, is that I tried to control that narrative to try to get people to respect me that didn't respect me. And at a certain point, you just have to not care what anybody else thinks. And you just have to get to a point where it's like, no. How do I become the best version of myself? And then that's going to attract some people and it's going to repel some people. And I just have to be okay with that.
Yep. I completely agree. I think the focus on your own well-being is always the right place. And I think that's what it comes down to.
It does. And again, it's so that you can care for other people.
Of course. That's right. So you can be the best version of yourself, which makes you a better parent, spouse, partner, sibling,
think of any leader or anybody that you look up to and respect, whether past or current. I think, at least for me, the ones that I respect all have something very similar, and they're so grounded and authentic and loving of themselves that they can give that to other people.
Yep.
Like
but
in the past, I think of people like Mother Teresa. Like you can't be Mother Teresa unless you really love and you're really authentic and you really care about yourself to go live with a bunch of poor people. You just can't do it.
Right.
One of my ultimate heroes, Tony Robbins. Like if you ever see him speak or do presentations or anything else, you can't fake that. Like you just can't. You have to be so centered and authentic in and of yourself that you can then help he's helped millions of people because of what's flown out of him. And I bet you anything, if he was on this podcast, he would agree with what we're saying right now. Because if he didn't have that in and of himself, he wouldn't be able to help anybody.
That's right.
You can only go a certain way unless you really, really feel that yourself.
No, I totally agree. I think it's really important. And I think it's a very worthwhile place for people who are in this really challenging, overwhelming space and transition to focus on, because it's the very best.
And it's okay. It's like, let me just, like you said this earlier, let me just tell people that are listening, if you're going through this, it's okay that if for a while you just need to back up a little bit, take some time to heal yourself, to get to a place where you can give back to the world. Don't feel like you have to keep going 100 miles an hour giving back to everybody right now, because it will fail. I promise you. You need time to just like figure out like, who am I? What am I going to be? Etc. Yeah. And that's a process.
You got to go through the process.
Overnight.
Yep. No.
You just have to. I wish you didn't. Trust me. I'm the guy that wishes I could have just
too.
like marked it off a list for one day and then just be done. Oh. Like I went through a divorce, like moving on.
Great. Next thing. Yeah. No, I think most of us would agree that would be ideal, but we also know it's not possible.
For sure. Andra, excuse me. I know we got to wrap up here, but thank you so much for being on here. I just want to remind everybody to reach out to Andra on Instagram. Check the show notes. Send her the derelict word. Get $50 off. Trust me, it's worth far more than she's charging for this course. So go check it out yourself.
Well, everybody deserves that emotional support. So I hope that they will take advantage of it, and it would be my pleasure to give it to as many of your listeners as possible. I
appreciate that very much. And I appreciate you being here. You have a lot of wisdom, and there's a lot of really great things you're doing. And I just want to tell you that I appreciate the work you're doing, because it's really needed, and there's just not a lot of people out there doing it. It's easy to feel that like you're doing it because you really care about it, and because you really care about people, because you want them to succeed. And it's not just, another way to put $1 in the bank account. So thanks.
Oh, no, I love doing this, and right back at you. I love that you're reaching so many people with the work that you're doing, and I'm really grateful to be part of it. So thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right, everyone, until next time, just remember to just a quick reminder, I say this every episode, but send this to a friend. Send this to somebody that you know that's going through a divorce or a difficult relationship, or, honestly, maybe somebody that's in a marriage that you're just like, I don't know, you kind of have a little bit of a feeling. Maybe they're feeling something. Send it to them, because, we're all about marriages here. We're not cynical. We're not saying, hey, everybody should end their marriage. So hopefully maybe something in here will save their marriage. That would be an amazing thing too.
Yeah.
Leave a comment, subscribe. It helps us get this to more people. And until next time, we'll see you later, you derelicts.